Last night happened, and you felt something. A thought arrived, about someone, or about a version of your life you'd stopped expecting. Something opened that you hadn't touched in a while. That was Venus meeting Neptune, the dream state, the feeling of, this is what I've been missing. Tonight is different. At 4:39 this morning, Eastern Time, Venus reached Saturn. Exactly. 2 planets, 2 degrees 38 minutes Aries. Saturn doesn't respond to beauty. It doesn't soften for longing. It asks one question, without delay, without apology. Is this real? Or have you simply been here long enough to call it home? There is a specific kind of love that lasts for years without being what you actually need. Not bad love, not cruel love. Simply enough love, enough to stay, enough to stop looking, enough to build a life around, while something quieter waits at the edge of your awareness without a name. Saturn, tonight, has a name for it. In the next few minutes, you'll discover 3 things. First, why this exact degree, 2 degrees 38 minutes Aries, carries a weight that hasn't been activated in approximately 6,400 years, and what that means for every decision about love you've been postponing. Second, why 1997 and 1998 are directly connected to what you're carrying right now, and what your body already remembers about that time. Third, a single-sentence protocol timed to tonight's conjunction that will show you, not tell you, exactly what you've been pretending is enough. Saturn doesn't arrive to punish. It arrives to measure. And what it measures tonight, you already know. The feeling arrived before the explanation. The body arrives first. Pressure in the chest with no external cause. A name surfacing at 3 a.m. without a trigger. The jaw clenched through the night, unnoticed until morning. A sentence started and forgotten mid-word, not from distraction, but from the weight of something unresolved running beneath everything else. After 50, waking between 3 and 4:30 a.m. follows a documented physiological pattern. Cortisol levels at night no longer sustain the sleep depth they held at 30. In that shallower window, the brain returns to its open loops. Things kept but never named, situations that ended before they were finished. What arrives in those hours is not noise, it is memory reconsolidation. The brain returning to work it set aside when the day was occupied. Waking at 3:47 with a thought about someone you haven't spoken to in years, that is not a signal from somewhere else. That is biology. That is the brain finishing something it left unresolved. Right now, someone is lying with open eyes and no reason they can name. Another is replaying a conversation from 7 years ago, exact words, exact silence. A third is carrying a weight so constant it has begun to feel like part of the room. None of them know about the others. Your body doesn't lie about what is real. And what it is telling you tonight has a name, exact degrees, exact time, and a weight that has been accumulating for approximately 6,400 years. Begin with the sky. 20 days ago, February 20th, 2 planets aligned at a point in the sky that had not been occupied simultaneously since approximately 4,400 BCE, Saturn and Neptune. Exact conjunction, 0 degrees 45 minutes of Aries, not in living memory, not in recorded history. The last time this occurred, there was no written language yet. 6,400 years. Place that many people in a line, each living exactly 100 years, and the person at the far end was alive when this last happened. The Egyptian pyramids had not been built. Rome did not exist. The sky overhead was the same. Everything beneath it was different. That was the opening. On March 6th, Venus entered Aries and began moving through that same point. Not Mars, not Jupiter. Venus, the first planet to cross the threshold of a new 6,000-year era. And the first thing she meets at that threshold is Saturn, the planet of longing, the planet of time. In the same degree, at the same moment, this morning at 4:39 a.m., that meeting was exact. 2 degrees 38 minutes Aries. Saturn is currently 1.4 billion kilometers from Earth. Its light left 80 minutes before you noticed it was there. It was already in transit while you were still asleep. The last time Saturn moved through Aries within your lifetime was 1996 to 1999. 1997. Princess Diana died in a Paris tunnel on August 31st. A love, real or performed, private or public, ended in full view of the world. 1998. In Washington, D.C., the most powerful man in the world stood before cameras and confirmed what everyone had quietly known for months. Saturn in Aries, the same sign, the same demand. Think back. What were you holding in 1997 or 1998, in your own life, in your own room, that you haven't fully released? Not loudly. Just, what was there that you quietly kept? Because letting go meant admitting something you weren't ready to say out loud. 1989. Saturn and Neptune met in Capricorn, the sign of permanent structures, of walls. On November 9th of that year, the Berlin Wall fell. A structure built on the premise of permanent separation collapsed in a single night, not because it was destroyed by force, because the people on both sides stopped believing in it simultaneously, before the order came to stop. Not because the sky caused it, but because the conditions that produce collective disillusionment with structures built on false premises, in nations, in institutions, in long-term relationships, tend to arrive together. But knowing the astronomy is not the same as understanding the question. And the question Saturn is asking tonight is not about the stars. It's about a particular kind of staying, a particular kind of love that has no name, because you never needed to give it one, because it was simply there. Saturn has a name for it tonight. But before we get there, you need to understand who this is for. There is a specific kind of person Saturn speaks to tonight, not someone whose relationship is collapsing with evidence and reasons and noise, someone whose relationship is fine. Someone who built a life around another person, organized routines, shared years, and somewhere in the process stopped expecting something more. Not because they gave up, because what they have is enough to stay. Enough. That word is the center of everything tonight. Venus entered Aries in her detriment, the sign directly opposite Libra, which she rules. In Aries, Venus cannot negotiate, cannot find the mutual warmth she naturally moves toward. The sign demands directness, the first, undecorated impulse. The heart wants comfort. The environment requires honesty. This is not a malfunction. It is a precise condition, love, placed in a setting where it can no longer avoid speaking plainly. And what it says plainly, after years of careful quiet, is not dramatic. It is this: you cannot remember the last time you felt fully seen by this person, not appreciated, not supported, seen. A kitchen at 6:15 a.m. coffee. Someone across the table reading a phone. Silence between you. Neutral. Not cold, not warm. A silence that has been here for 1,000 mornings. You don't remember when it arrived. You don't remember when you stopped expecting it to change. The prefrontal cortex processes unresolved emotional narratives differently after 50, not because something is wrong, but because the brain has accumulated enough context to recognize patterns it once moved past. Situations that never closed, questions answered with silence, conversations that ended before they finished. These consolidate as open loops. The brain returns to them at night, in quiet, at the edge of conscious control. Not from sentimentality, from unfinished work that the daytime kept postponing. Saturn is not Venus's adversary. In classical synastry, the comparative study of two charts, a strong Saturn is one of the primary markers of lasting relationships. Saturn does not destroy love. It removes what only appeared to be love. What remains after that is real. What disappears was never structural to begin with. Tonight, millions of people are sitting in that same kitchen silence. Different countries, different languages, different names on the other side of the table. None of them speaking first. All of them carrying the same question they haven't said out loud. Saturn has one moment tonight where it measures all of it at once. 4:39 a.m. That moment is now. 4:39 a.m. Eastern Time. This is the moment of exact conjunction. Two planets at the same degree, the same arc minute of sky. Venus and Saturn. 2 degrees 38 minutes Aries. This is not a window, not an approximation. This is a point. Outside, the city is still dark. Civil twilight has not begun. Acoustically, physiologically, this is the quietest moment of the entire day. Inside the body, cortisol has begun its morning rise. The system is waking before the mind knows it is awake. There is a narrow space in these minutes where awareness exists before defense does. This is what Saturn chose. Not noon, not a dramatic hour. This one. The ritual is not complex. It is one sentence written by hand. Paper, a pen, not a phone, a pen. You sit with it. You write one sentence beginning with a name. The name that has been present in your thoughts for the past 3 days. You already know whose it is. You write that name and then what is true about it. One sentence, unedited. Handwriting engages the motor sensory cortex in a way typing does not. The hand moves slower than thought. In that gap between what the mind intends and what the hand forms, there is a space where the edited version cannot arrive in time. What appears on paper is closer to what is real than what you would have typed. If the hand writes, you know what you know. If the hand stops and holds above the paper in silence, you also know what you know. Saturn does not read the sentence, but you do. Venus is in detriment tonight, in the sign that demands the first undecorated impulse. No softening, no mutual adjustment. The heart, placed where it cannot negotiate, placed where it must say the plain thing or say nothing. That is what your hand is over the paper. When you finish, place the sheet face down. Do not reread it immediately. The sheet is not for anyone else. It will never need to be. It exists for this moment only, for the measurement Saturn required and you provided. This is not a spiritual act. It is a precise one. The conjunction lasts minutes at exactitude, days at influence. But the sentence, the one your hand wrote or refused to write, that carries its own duration. Saturn moves slowly. It will be in Aries until 2028. What became visible tonight will not return to invisible. The sheet lies face down. And in the silence after, something has changed. Not loudly, not irreversibly, not yet. But the question that has been forming for years inside the chest, it has a shape now. A few words, a name. Saturn doesn't tell you what to do with it. It only shows you what it found. Saturn has a reputation for destruction. It is not accurate. Saturn removes what was built on pretense. The material it removes is real. Time, habit, shared memory, genuine conversation, years of quiet mornings. The illusion is not made of nothing. It is made of real things, assembled into a structure that does not hold at the center. Saturn sees the structure beneath the details. If the structure is empty, it names that. Quietly, without ceremony. What remains after that naming is not less. It is what was real the entire time. The hardest thing about enough love is not that it hurts. It is that it gives you no reason to leave. No one was cruel. No one betrayed. There was no event, no collapse, no clear moment you could point to and say, here, this is where it ended. There was only the gradual, invisible process of two people who stopped expecting something from each other and called the resulting quiet stability. There are two kinds of silence. The first is the silence between people who have said everything worth saying and do not need to fill the space. It is warm from the inside. The second is the silence between people who stopped speaking because both stopped expecting the other to hear. It is neutral, not cold, not warm, simply present, like a wall that has stood so long it feels structural. Saturn sees the difference between those two silences. Tonight, for the first time in a very long time, so do you. Every generation carries people who have lived 20, 30, 40 years beside someone, not from fear, not from duty, but from enough. Saturn returns to Aries approximately every 29 years. In 1996 to 1999, it asked this question for an entire generation simultaneously. It is asking again now, in 2025 to 2028. But on March 8, 2026, it asks for the first time at the threshold of a 6,000-year cycle. The question is not only enough or not enough. The question is, what will you build now that you have words for it? The sheet is still where you left it. You don't need to read it now. Saturn is not waiting. The measurement was taken in the moment the hand moved or stopped. What is written or what remained unwritten is not a verdict. It is information. The kind your body already held, the kind your mind spent years arranging around rather than looking at directly. You already know what is on that sheet. Saturn measured it. The question now is simpler and harder than anything that came before it. Not, what do I do? But, will I allow myself to know what I already know? In the space between those two questions, that is where tonight lives. That is what 2 degrees 38 minutes Aries opened at 4:39 in the morning, in the quietest hour of the day, while most of the city was still asleep. Saturn doesn't give answers. It removes the distance between you and the one you were already holding. The room after a measurement is different from the room before, not because anything moved. The furniture is where it was. The window holds the same dark. The quiet outside has not changed, but something inside the space has shifted. The way a room feels different when furniture that stood in the corner for 20 years is finally removed. The walls look different, not because they changed, because now you can see them. This is what Saturn leaves, not damage, not clarity with instructions attached, space. When the Berlin Wall came down in November 1989, the architects who came after faced something unexpected. A city divided so long that no one living remembered it whole. The space that opened between East and West Berlin was not empty in the way a field is empty. It was loaded with the outline of what had been there. They did not fill it immediately. The space needed to be space first. With time, that ground became Potsdamer Platz, the Berlinische Gallery. Entire neighborhoods that could not have existed without the removal of the structure that had divided them. Not a monument to what was lost, what became possible only in the space the wall left. Not because the sky caused any of it, but because the space that opens after a long structure is removed, in cities, in people, in rooms, tends to hold the same quality. It is material. It is real. It can be built upon. But first, it must simply be what it is. Venus continues moving through Aries. Saturn stays until 2028. The point where they met tonight does not close. The sheet is still where you left it, face down. You can read it now, or tomorrow, or not at all. Saturn has already received what it came for, in the moment the hand moved or held still above the paper. The sheet belongs only to you now. Notice the chest. Slightly less occupied than an hour ago, not lighter the way happiness is light, lighter the way a room is lighter when it holds only what is real. Saturn measured tonight, not loudly, the way the most permanent things always happen, in a quiet room, in the pause before a sentence you finally stopped rehearsing. What you're left with isn't emptiness, it's space, the specific kind that only opens when you stop maintaining something that was never quite right. The question now isn't what to release. Saturn already answered that. The question is what you build in the space it left, and that takes time to answer honestly. If this moved something in you, stay close. What comes next in this sequence matters.